So good morning, Year 12, and welcome to Health and Social Care at Herts and Essex. I'm Mrs. Bradford, the subject leader for Health and Social Care. I want to start by introducing the staff on the team and the course structure. So there's two members of staff. Myself, I'll be teaching 6 lessons a fortnight with you. Just a little bit of history. I am a PE teacher and I've been teaching health and social care since I started teaching about 18 years ago. So lots of experience teaching health and social care. We also have Mrs. Dalton, who is currently the head of science and specialises in biology. And she will be teaching 3 of your lessons out of the fortnight. So in Year 12, we cover 3 units. You will have 2 exam units. Those will both be taught by myself. So that's the Health and Safety and Security unit and the Equality, Diversity and Rights unit. And you will have 1 coursework unit, which will be taught by Mrs. Dalton, and this focuses on building positive relationships. So the plan of study for Year 12 looks a little bit like this. You will start with building positive relationships with Mrs. Dalton, and this will run for the whole year. Because you only have 3 lessons with her, it will take a little bit longer to complete, and we aim for the moderation of this piece of work in the June. For you, it will be June 2021. With me and the exams, you will start with the Health, Safety and Security unit, and your exam will actually be in January of 2021. So we run this alongside the work you are doing with Miss Dalton. You will start in September with me looking at the Health, Safety and Security with the aim of doing the exam in the January. After you've completed this exam, you will still continue to do your coursework with Mrs. Dalton. But with me, we change to Equality, Diversity and Rights, and we will aim to complete that by June 2021, where you will sit an exam in the summer. So you will have 2 exams out of the way at the end of Year 12. We will then have some time towards the end of Year 12 to start the Anatomy and Physiology unit, and that's what we're currently doing with the Year 12s at the moment. So this is an exam unit that myself and Mrs. Dalton will share, and we will aim to start that in June 2021, and you will be examined in the January of 2022, so when you're in Year 13. So I thought we'd have a look at what the current Year 12s are doing in their lessons at the moment. And you can have a go at some of the activities as we're going along. The Year 12s have just finished looking at the cardiovascular system and are moving on to the respiratory system. Remember, this is one of your exam units. So if you have done the Level 2 Health and Social Care qualification, you'll remember that that was a coursework unit. You are now going to be examined on similar information. Now, with all the topics in this unit, you need to look at the structure, the function of the body system, and what can go wrong. So if you look at the learning outcomes for this particular lesson, we need to look at the different components of the respiratory system. So make sure you can identify all those various parts of the respiratory system. We need to explain the function of all those different components. We're going to look specifically at inhalation and exhalation, so how we breathe in, how we breathe out, what happens when we are breathing in and when we are breathing out. We'll also have a look at asthma and the effects that asthma can have on the structure and the function of the component parts of the respiratory system. So your first task, a little bit of revision, probably from your GCSE biology and GCSE science. I would like you to label the diagram. So you can either make a mental note of where all those different parts are, or you could print your screen and then print it out and annotate the diagram, or you could print screen and put it into a Word document and label it that way. So if you pause your video now and have a go at labeling that diagram. Okay, so now you need to check your answers, and your diagram should look like this. Your next task is to think about what each of the component parts do. What is their actual function? You may know some of this already, but equally you may need to look some of the information up. You might need to use your science books, you might need to use the internet. But what I would like you to do is complete the table and fill in as much detail as possible in that right-hand column. So if you pause your video now and have a go at doing that. So now check your answers. If you look at the column on the right hand side, you have now got lots of information in there that explains the function of each of those component parts. Check this against what you have and make changes where necessary. So now we're looking at inhalation and exhalation. If you put your hand on your chest while you breathe in and out, you can feel and you can see it moving. But why is this actually happening? And what's actually going on inside the body to make your hand move up and down? What I want you to do is look at the diagram and to watch the video and see if you can have a think about what is actually going on inside the body. Okay, after watching the video, and you can go back and look at that slide, the diagram again. Your task is to explain the process of inhalation and exhalation, and you've got to include the function of those different component parts. So, for example, what are the pleural membranes doing? What is the diaphragm doing? The intercostal muscles, the ribs. What's actually happening? And what are they actually doing? So have a try at writing that down. You can use diagrams to help you explain this if you want. I would now like you to carry out a research task. So we've looked at the structure, we've looked at the function of different parts of the respiratory system. We now need to think about what could actually go wrong with the respiratory system. So I'd like you to use the links at the bottom of the screen to try and answer the questions in front of you. So, what is asthma? Which parts of the respiratory system are affected by asthma? How is the respiratory system affected by asthma? So that means what actually goes wrong with the structure and the function of the respiratory system, and why is it going wrong? What is actually happening there? And what are the triggers for asthma? So if you can have a go at finding out some of that information, you can pause your video now. And finally, because this is an exam unit, I thought we could have a look at some exam questions. So these are typical exam questions that have come up in previous years. The first one focuses on Samantha and her asthma and what is actually going wrong within the airways of the lungs. So you have to explain what is actually happening during an asthma attack to those component parts. And then the second part is to talk about the triggers of asthma. So you need to be able to identify the triggers and explain how she can avoid those possible triggers. So if you have a go at doing those questions now, so you can pause your video now. Okay, so now you can check your answers. So in that first question, if you look to the guidance on the right-hand side, it gives you an indication of what you need to do to get 1 or 2 marks, and they want a full description. So you need to be talking in full sentences. You cannot list, you cannot bullet point. It has to be in full sentences. And the types of things that you need to talk about are in the column on the left-hand side. So you need to talk about the muscles in the bronchioles constricting, which means that they narrow and therefore restrict the airflow. You could talk about the inflammation that occurs in the bronchioles, which causes mucus to be produced, which can restrict the airflow through the bronchioles. Question 1b is talking about triggers and how you avoid the triggers. So to get those in within that higher mark band, the level 2, you need to talk about 2 or more triggers. If you've only talked about 1, you're going to fall into the level 1 category and you're only going to score a maximum of 3 marks. What we need to be aiming for is obviously the maximum of the 6 marks. So you need to be working towards that level 2 criteria. And again, if you will notice in that middle column, you need to have good quality of written communication. That has to be high. So you are going to be marked on your spelling, punctuation and grammar, and whether your sentences flow and there is a structure to your answer. If you look at the points on the left-hand side, you will see the things that the content that you had to include. So you can talk about 2 or 3 of those to get your 6 marks, but also you must say what they have to do to avoid those possible triggers. So for example, if you're talking about pet hairs being a trigger, you need to talk about maybe looking at pets that have fur or coats that do not shed their fur easily. You could talk about hoovering regularly to get rid of that fur. She may not want to have a pet at all. You could also talk about dust within the house and talking about cleaning regularly and using the most appropriate cleaners, because also certain cleaners can give off chemicals which could also trigger your asthma. And then another example would be pollen. And again, people need to avoid going outside when pollen levels are high, and also they could keep windows, doors shut when they know that the pollen levels are high. You also might want to think about washing your clothes regularly because pollen can stay on your clothes. Okay, so that's the end of the lesson for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for taking part, and I do look forward to seeing you all in September.